Okay, so OpenEyes. OpenEyes is an open source electronic patient record system for ophthalmology that's been developed by Moorfields Eye Hospital. And it is now run, the code has been passed over, the IP has been passed over to the OpenEyes Foundation. This is an open source, a charitable foundation here in the UK, and it's designed to promote and develop this whole piece of software about of OpenEyes. And it's there to sort out some of the issues that we have not only in ophthalmology but in many different clinical professions in the NHS. And that is that the data for an individual patient is scattered liberally to the four winds everywhere in the organisation. On paper notes, which isn't very helpful, in emails, on computer systems, on databases, and in imaging devices and equipment that exists in the organisation. The problem for the clinician is that there is no one source of clinical data. They have to go to all of these pieces of equipment to get a good view. Now the problem with that is that a clinician may make the wrong diagnosis. If he hasn't got the right information available to him, then the chances of making a misdiagnosis are quite significant. What we need to do is to bring all that data together into one place. And what OpenEyes seeks to do from an ophthalmology point of view, and it's something that can be extended into other clinical areas as well, is bring that data together into one view, which is what OpenEyes is. What we want is something like this. So this is nirvana for an air traffic controller. If an air traffic controller didn't have this, all the data he needs to manage air traffic around a particular airport, if he didn't have a unified view, there would be problems, obviously. What we need is something that brings it together from an ophthalmology point of view, from a clinical point of view. And that's what EPR systems are there to do. Unfortunately, most EPR systems talk about patient data or hospitalisation type data, i.e. what have they used, etc. What we need to do is bring together the key bits of data for the ophthalmologist. So let's have a look at what OpenEyes is. So this is pure open source software developed by Moorfields, and here you see the patient record. If I can get my mouse on it, there we go. So here we have, it's run on episodes. So here we have an episode of care, in this case for glaucoma, and an episode is all the things that happen to a patient from the start of the, coming into the hospital, being referred in, right the way through to the end when they get discharged. And these things that happen are events. So an event could be an examination, a pathology, an image taken from a fundus machine or whatever, and plopped into a record. And in this case, it could also be an examination. So here we have an examination, and the idea of OpenEyes is that it's very fast to get data into the system. So from a history point of view, what is it? Maybe it's blurred vision. What's the severity? Well, moderate. In terms of the onset, how quickly? Was it gradual or whatever? Fast for the clinician to get data into the system, because that's absolutely critical. And I would point out that this system has been developed by clinicians for clinicians. So this is all to do with making it right for clinicians. It's not developed by IT people for clinicians. It's been developed by the guys who need it themselves. Where we look here, down here, there's a lot of drawing tools here that allow very fast and easy descriptions of conditions. So here is the anterior segment, the front of the eye. And if I just clear all the data here and reset it, if I had someone sitting in front of me now going through an examination, what I could do is, oh, there's a bit of a cataract. Very quick and easy to point out or to add the fact that they've got one. If in terms of what type it is, if we click on the handle, we can move the cataract, we can change the sizing. Oops, see if I can do that, there we are. As I change it here, that you'll see that the nuclear cataract there changes. We can change the pupil size to small, or indeed we can do it manually, doing it using the tools. We can add things like different IOLs, we can add different conditions. Very quickly a clinician can build up a view of what's going on within the eye. The cool thing about that is that when we click on report, as I do here, the data that we've defined here goes straight into the database. And underpinning this is our clinical data sets. Those clinical data sets are very large sets of data that define what the condition is. So there's one for cataract, there's one for glaucoma, etc. And these are being defined by the Royal College of Ophthalmology, but they are standards that everybody will be adhering to. And what that means is that when we drop this stuff down into the data set, we're capturing data that's going to be incredibly useful for people like pharmaceutical companies, research and development guys. A lot of work has been going on into the treatment of eye conditions and eye diseases. But without data, it's really hard to do so. It takes a long time to get that data together from paper notes and from all those different devices that we saw just a second ago. If we can capture that easily and have that accessible to people, it is fantastic. Suddenly, instead of taking several months to get, maybe a thousand people in a research study, it takes minutes to do from the set of data that we have in Moorfields. In Moorfields now, we have something like 150,000 records. In these examinations, we have something like 5,000 to 6,000 cataract examinations. Fantastic amounts of data that can be now used by research and development guys, these clever clinicians, etc., to be able to then do something with it and change the way things are done for eyesight and for changing the way that the specialty works in a hospital. So OpenEyes is full of these diagrams here. We call it eye draw, and for each specialty there will be maybe 10, 20 of these things. And over time what we're doing is filling up the examination with a number of these things so that clinicians can very quickly diagnose problems. So OpenEyes then becomes a tool that allows us to capture information, report on that information, and do outcome analysis, etc. The other good thing is because it's in the database, anything we then do, providing correspondence, doing operation notes, it just is a cumulative effect. So we don't have to keep adding data. The clinician just has to sit down, pick the patient, add just a very small amount of data, and then use it in their examinations and in their surgeries. And what we're finding is that the uptake around the country has been significant. There's a lot of ophthalmologists now wanting this. Is because it's been driven by clinicians who have designed it and have told us, the IT department, how to manage that. But the way of doing it is quite significant. Normally it would be a commercial activity from a company, and you see several around here today, who design this software. Now the problem with that is that there's a very small number of folks who get involved, clinicians, because they want to be paid, they want to have some kickback from the input that they make. We don't want to go that route, and right early on we went through to an open source model. And open source works, and if open source is, it allows people to get involved and to spread the news very, very easily and very quickly. And it started with this is a sort of archetypal open source chap. He must be good because he's got that sort of nice Victorian hairy beard. Mr. Bunsen, who invented the Bunsen burner, he didn't patent it, he didn't try and sell it commercially, he just said, look, great design, everybody can use this and everybody can then make the most of it. And of course what's happened is that, every school in the country, in the world probably, has this stuck on their chemistry and physics benches and what have you. It works, it gets stuff out there. And it allows people to use it and then to refine it and work on that particular principle. Medicine is absolutely open source in its inherent way that it develops things. If I'm not a clinician, I'm an IT person, but the clinicians out there, they will develop a new procedure or whatever, they'll go to a conference, they'll tell everybody about it. Next year, someone will come back and say, oh, fantastic idea you had last year, I've refined that and here's the results of what I've done. They push things forward by collaboration. Open source is all about collaboration. And what we've done with the OpenEyes Foundation is consolidate that collaboration so that it then works for people and we can do more OpenEyes, more product that works for people. So it's all about sharing ideas, sharing documents, sharing code. We license it, and it's under what's called an open source license to prevent commercial exploitation, because a lot of people out there want to make money out of it. So the license is there to stop that happening and allow lots of people to benefit from it. And one of the key principles of OpenEyes is that we're there for the rest of the world. So that it's good for Moorfields and good for the NHS, it's also good for people in developing countries. And we have had Orbis, who are they're called the Flying Eye, but they're a non-governmental charity based in the US. It's about the third or fourth biggest eye prevention or blindness prevention charity in the world. They've taken this on, OpenEyes on, because it is open source, because they can help develop it for things that the conditions that they find in places like India and Africa and what have you, things like river blindness and trachoma. So what we're trying to do is to allow this to spread globally and let everybody not only use it, but participate in it and feedback. And that feedback process allows rapid progress in terms of new things being added. As someone saying Cardiff develops a glaucoma module, as they did, they give it to the open source OpenEyes Foundation and it gets pulled in as part of OpenEyes. So we in Moorfields did the cataract module, the guys in Wales did the glaucoma module. And how that works is that, in a sense, we at Moorfields provided the iPhone, if you like. Everybody else is starting to provide the apps for that, so the glaucoma app or the cataract application, etc. And that is exactly what we're seeing now, and the foundation is there to promote the creation of these things so that more people can use it, more people can benefit from it. So in Moorfields we started back in 2010 when it was initiated. We've had the team developed and what have you. We're now seeing this blossom and grow, and as we start moving forward, this thing here, glaucoma, coming in, and we could add it earlier because someone else did it. Maidstone Hospital did the medical retina piece. And what we're seeing is different people now getting involved. And it's not just developers developing stuff, it's clinicians giving of their expertise to the OpenEyes Foundation. So we've had something like 50 different clinicians from around the country contributing to OpenEyes. You know, what it should be there. Those little development things, those iDraw doodles and diagrams I showed you earlier, about 50 different clinicians, experts in their field, contributed to that particular those particular modules. And what it means is you get the best people contributing the best ideas to a product, so it rolls on and gets better. So here we are, the 50 clinicians, and I mentioned also that this was developed in Cardiff and Maidstone and funded by those hospitals. But they put the stuff in and everybody benefits. In fact, almost to the point where here's the Welsh example, and you can probably work out that the Welsh did something with this through their branding of their own particular version of OpenEyes. But it allows people to get involved, to get with it, and to be able to use it. So the foundation is there to make it happen. It is an open source foundation. We think it's the first proper one in the UK, totally independent of Moorfields, but it is a charity now, not for profit. So any profit that we do make in the trading activities, like most charities, goes back into doing more open source, or more OpenEyes in this case. And the key thing here is that the members control direction. They control what happens to it. What's the next piece of functionality? What's the roadmap for, say, glaucoma or cataract or whatever? And we are now recruiting people into the OpenEyes Foundation. So the objective is to develop and maintain this open source ophthalmic system to have really reliable and safe software. So being open source doesn't mean to say it's some nasty little piece of something that you download from the web and it fails at the first time you use it. It's got to be bulletproof. It has to be as good as any commercial system, and in fact almost better, because we have to prove ourselves in that environment. But the idea is to have a fully functional ophthalmological clinical information system that is the best in the world. My background is coming from Apple computers, and what I want to bring to the party is that level of quality to not only the product, but obviously the delivery of the product as well. So the aims: develop and maintain that vision, develop the product. We own the intellectual property, so we can push it out as open source, or we can do whatever we like with the product and push it forward. But it's also there to nurture the ecosystem. So it's not just to develop the software, but how the software gets out to people. So it's the training resources, it's the integration with other hospital systems, etc. And this thing at the bottom, this last point here, is absolutely critical, because all that data that I was talking about earlier that's been brought in, suddenly there is a huge amount of data that never existed before. It really has not existed, which is bizarre considering, you know, the fact we're nearly in 2014 and we haven't really been able to manage data relating to eyes before. But once this stuff comes in, the data potential, as I say, 150,000 records in Moorfields, you imagine lots of trusts using it and bringing that data in. That as a resource for research and development for pharmaceutical companies is significant. And it's not quite like the Genome Project, but you get the idea that it is very significant and can make a big difference to, you know, to the world of sightedness and to the development of techniques, etc., to improve how sight, the clinical research into sight happens. It also is there to promote the whole area of training. So it's not just product training. So this is the OpenEyes, we call it the OpenEyes Academy, but it's the e-learning site for OpenEyes. So it trains people on, or has a lot of e-learning videos on how to use the software, etc. So here it is. This is the fundamentals. So these are current things that we have running: how to use episodes and events, how to use the patient summary, etc. Small, pithy little chunks of video. That's fantastic, and things like FAQs as well. You know, how do I? What happens? But what we're moving into is, how does that use as part of a solution? It's all well and good to use the product, but what happens when you're there and you're using a new procedure? You're going to cut someone's eye open. It sounds all very horrible, but you're doing an operation on an eye. What are the complications for that? Maybe it's an operation I've not really done very often. What are the complications? The e-learning side will allow people then to look at what's happening, or what could happen, all the different complications that you can have in a sort of drop down in an e-learning sense. So you'll see a little video of all the different things that could go wrong. That level of training, that pushing a solution together, is really what we're about in OpenEyes. Not just the software, but the clinical side as well, and also the operational side, how to use the software in context of the hospital and the hospital process. And that's another key thing that we're looking at. Now, the funding for this has come from Moorfields, lots of it, about £4 or £5 million worth. But we now, because we're a charitable foundation, are looking at bringing money in from other activities, from the trading company, from charitable donation, and direct funding from other sources, people like Orbis, who I mentioned earlier. And we hope central government, although they're very tardy, despite the fact they say they support open source, are very loath to actually put any money into the piece. Now, we manage it through standard structure, so board of directors and executive, technical board, to make sure it's going in the right direction. The key thing here is that there are individual members are part of it. They are the most important side of the whole piece. They get involved in these projects down here. These projects are work groups based on the subspecialties that you would expect to see within ophthalmology, be it cataract, glaucoma, medical retina, etc. They come together as work groups to determine what do they want to see in the product, what requirements, what's the next thing they should be doing. And that's how OpenEyes is moving forward, through the people getting involved in these particular project work groups. And out of it, we start moving it forward to a support. There's a support organisation that then allows OpenEyes to be pushed out there to other organisations other than Moorfields. The training side, which I've already mentioned, and as well as data management, so managing the data that exists and that is being created through the OpenEyes instances that we see. So the foundation is there to make sure OpenEyes is successful, and to do things such as provide the roadmap, to tell people what's next coming up and what we're working on, coordinate all those projects that are happening, all the development work that's going on. Being a sort of an organisation that now is dealing with a number of hospitals, we can, from one perspective, one central point, negotiate with suppliers, and rather than just say, we can talk to the big manufacturers and say, look, here's OpenEyes, how about lowering your prices, for instance, if you're talking of particular types of machine. More importantly, we can start saying, well, look, here's OpenEyes. How do we get the best out of your equipment and OpenEyes if we share data? Making the best out of the integration between the two bits of equipment. We'll also make sure that OpenEyes is there and communicated and able to be used by lots of different people from marketing, etc., and providing a lot of supporting material for people to use it. And then finally, the ecosystem, all the things I've been talking about, from installing it, supporting it, maintaining it, providing processes and procedures. So the foundation brings everything together and allows people to be effective in the use of the product. So just a very quick run through in terms of what OpenEyes is, the product, this open source ophthalmological electronic patient record, and how it's being managed and maintained in the big wide world.